In the beginning, before time began to count, before stars learned to shine, before man took his first breath, there was only perfection. The earth was young, clothed in light, breathing the rhythm of heaven itself. Rivers shimmered with clarity, flowing through valleys of gold and green. Every tree bore fruit in its season. Every creature moved in peace. And at the center of it all stood a garden, Eden, the masterpiece of goddess creation, untouched by corruption or decay. It was not just a garden. It was a realm of divine harmony where heaven and earth touched. The air was thick with the sound of life, and the very soil pulsed with holiness. Angels walked among trees of silver bark and golden leaves. Light never faded. The wind carried music, the sound of existence perfectly aligned with its creator. But even in paradise, something watched. Something ancient. A being who did not belong to the beasts that crawled or flew. He was the serpent. Not the slithering creature we imagine today, but radiant, a being of light and intelligence, moving upright, clothed in a beauty both alluring and unsettling. The Hebrew word used in Genesis, Naash, means more than serpent. It means shining one, bringer of enchantment. Before the fall, this being was not a symbol of evil. He was wise, perhaps even divine. Some scholars and mystics believe he was one of the Watchers, the celestial beings appointed by God to observe and guide creation. Among these Watchers were some who became fascinated with humanity. They saw something in mankind that stirred their spirit, an echo of the divine, but bound in fragile flesh. One of these Watchers, perhaps the most brilliant among them, descended to walk within the garden. He saw Eve, the mother of all living, as she moved among the trees in the soft glow of eternal morning. Her eyes were filled with wonder, innocence, and the kind of curiosity that only purity can know. The serpent watched her, and he spoke. His voice was not a hiss, but gentle, melodic, persuasive, a tone that blended truth and mystery. He asked a question that would forever change human history. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Eve, startled but unafraid, answered that they could eat from any tree except the one in the middle of the garden. God had warned them that if they ate it, they would surely die. The serpent tilted his head and smiled. "You shall not surely die," he said. "For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil." And there it was, the spark, the first flicker of doubt, the first taste of curiosity. For the first time, Eve began to question. What was this knowledge that God had forbidden? What was he keeping from them? This was not temptation in the way we often imagine. It was an awakening. The serpent offered her not pleasure, but understanding. The chance to know, to see the world beyond innocence. And in that moment, humanity's destiny shifted. Some say this was deception. Others say it was revelation. Because when Eve reached for the fruit, she did not do it out of rebellion. She did it out of desire to understand. And perhaps that desire was the very spark of divine consciousness itself. When she and Adam ate the fruit, their eyes were opened. But what they saw was not glory, it was separation. They realized their nakedness, the raw vulnerability of their existence. Shame entered creation. Guilt was born. And in that moment, the perfection of Eden was shattered like glass. God's voice thundered through the garden, echoing across eternity. "Adam, where are you?" It was not a question of location, but of loss. God knew what had happened. The innocence of creation was gone. The balance had been broken. And so, the man and woman were driven from paradise, not as punishment, but as consequence. For once the knowledge of good and evil had entered their minds, there could be no return to innocence. And the serpent, the bringer of this awakening, was cursed. "Because you have done this," said God, "cursed are you above all livestock. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life." But was this curse literal? Or was it symbolic, the story of a celestial being cast down from light to dust, from heaven to earth? In many ancient interpretations, this serpent was not just an animal, but a fallen angel, perhaps even Lucifer himself. The light bearer who once shone brighter than the morning star, who sought to share forbidden knowledge and was condemned for it. The story of the serpent is echoed across countless myths and civilizations. The Greeks told of Prometheus, the titan who stole fire, the symbol of divine wisdom, from the gods and gave it to mankind. For his defiance, he was punished, bound to a rock for eternity. In the same way, the serpent gave humanity the fire of awareness and paid with eternal exile. In ancient Mesopotamia, the serpent was Ninjishida, the god of knowledge, who guided the souls of the dead. In Egypt, it was the uraeus, the sacred serpent worn on the crowns of pharaohs, symbolizing divine authority and enlightenment. Even in the Americas, the feathered serpent god, Quetzalcoatl, was the bringer of civilization and knowledge to humankind. Everywhere we look, the serpent is not evil. It is the symbol of wisdom, rebirth, and transformation. So why does the serpent in Genesis bear the mark of evil? Perhaps because knowledge is dangerous. Because to know too much, too soon, can destroy innocence. God's command may not have been about control but protection, shielding mankind from a truth they were not ready to bear. In the apocryphal book of Enoch, the watchers who fell from heaven were punished not for lust alone, but for sharing heavenly secrets with humanity, secrets of metallurgy, enchantment, medicine, and the movement of the stars. They gave mankind power that belonged only to the divine. Could the serpent have been one of them, sharing the first forbidden secret of all, the awareness of good and evil? The parallels are striking. Both the serpent and the watchers acted out of a desire to uplift mankind, yet both were cast down for their defiance. Both stories suggest a tension between divine order and the hunger for knowledge. But if we look deeper, perhaps the serpent's role was not purely one of rebellion. Maybe it was destiny. Because without that moment in the garden, humanity would have remained forever in ignorance, living, but not truly alive. The fall, painful as it was, may have been the first step toward becoming what we were meant to be. Think about it. Only after leaving Eden did humanity begin to create, to explore, to build. Only after separation did we begin to search for God, to seek redemption, to question the mysteries of the universe. Could it be that the serpent's act, though tragic, was the beginning of human evolution, the moment we became aware of ourselves and our Creator? Throughout Scripture, the serpent reappears, not just as the symbol of evil, but as a reminder of transformation. In the wilderness, Moses lifted up a bronze serpent on a pole so that anyone bitten by snakes could look upon it and live. A symbol of healing, not destruction. Even Jesus later said, "As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up." The serpent and the cross, two symbols of suffering and salvation intertwined. It is almost as if God Himself redeemed the image of the serpent, turning what was once cursed into a symbol of healing and resurrection. Perhaps this is the mystery. The serpent was not destroyed, it was transformed. And that transformation mirrors our own story. We are born into innocence, fall into awareness, suffer for our knowledge, and yet rise again seeking redemption. The serpent's whisper still echoes in our minds, the eternal question, what if there is more to know? From the halls of ancient temples to the laboratories of modern science, mankind has always pursued the fruit of knowledge. We have reached for the stars, split the atom, and decoded the human genome. We have eaten the fruit again and again, chasing the divine spark that first lit our minds in Eden. And with every discovery, we face the same question. Are we growing closer to God or further away? Maybe the serpent was never truly our enemy. Maybe he was the mirror that showed us what we could become, beings capable of understanding good and evil, creation and destruction, life and death. The story of the serpent is not just the story of sin. It is the story of awakening, the story of humanity's endless hunger for truth. And perhaps that is why it still matters today. Because deep within each of us, that whisper remains, soft, persistent, and ancient. It asks, what else lies beyond the veil? The serpent in the garden never died. He walks among us still, not as a beast, but as a voice in our minds, urging us to question, to seek, to awaken. He is the spark of curiosity, the whisper of forbidden wisdom, the reminder that even in our fall, we were reaching for something divine. So, who was the serpent really? A deceiver or a liberator? A destroyer or a teacher? Was he the enemy of God, or the instrument through which humanity began its journey toward divinity? Maybe the truth is not as simple as good or evil. Maybe the serpent was both, the light and the shadow, the question and the answer, the one who opened our eyes to see the beauty and the burden of knowing. And maybe, just maybe, the real sin was never the eating of the fruit, but the fear of knowledge itself. Because once the eyes are opened, they can never be closed again.